shall we? Fuck. Got 2 lessons to go. We're on lesson 7 now. How you doing, man? We hit 95 wood cutting too. Looking at this website, Ask Brilliant. It's supposed to teach you about the basics of coding and lesson form and continue onwards. Congrats. Oh, thank you, man. Are you learning how to code? I think you mentioned you wanted to do that the other day. Yeah. Nice. Well, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask, man. It's fun to get into if you have an idea of what you want to make. Dude, I cannot make this jump. Okay, no worries, man. I'll be here. You know where to find me. Fuck, dude. Hey, no worries, man. Take that trash out. Get that trash out of here. Yeah, I'll keep trying. Hey Google, turn off sound. So in a little bit, bud.
Mission ends in 60 seconds. Mission ends in 30 seconds.
Proceed! I spare no expense
Mission
on
ends in 10
luxuries.
seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You failed stalemate. 30 seconds. Mission begins in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
is supposed to move forward! Why is it not moving?
Hey, welcome back, Riz. Oh, nice. Yeah, there's a lot of math to code. It's all good, man. I'm almost done with the B event. We've got 4K left to go. Outfit's kind of cool.
Additional time.
Oh.
This will be the last time you see me.
Nice, you got plenty of time, man. That's 1,000 a day. You got time. Yeah, you got plenty of time, man. You'll get it.
We've got to stop that bomb!
Sky.
You disgust.
How's your rune crafting going, Grizz? Did you hit 60 yet? Nice, got 60. How do you do dungeoneering? I'm still level 1. Nice. That's way better than mine, man. Very nice. How long is your, how long have you had your account? Minus 76? Nice, dude. Cause you're blazing through those levels. Although I've been woodcutting for like the longest time. Gotcha. Hey, you know, a cool thing you can do is you can actually do account age. It'll spit out how long you've been playing, streaming or hanging out on Twitch. Speaking of age.
To the bomb top. Roll back to hell, you bloody cart.
Yeah, that's pretty good, man. I heard they're doing an event. Are you gonna be doing the event that's going on? It's like Deadman or something.
Mission ends in 30 seconds.
Yeah, the League's event. Are you gonna be doing that? Ah, gotcha. Gotcha, gotcha. I don't know what the event does. I don't know what the league is for. Sky, what are you doing? You gain a bunch of cosmetic items for reaching a certain rank. Oh, nice. Oh, really? So what's the difference between that and normal RuneScape? Oh, yeah, well, I figured that. Huh, that's pretty cool, though. Oh, neat. So what is it for? Is it just to get cosmetics? Is that all it is? Oh, I see. That's cool. Should we start up the next lesson? Man, dude, it's already 5 o'clock today.
Description. In this lesson, we're going to start making our e-commerce project interactive. And then we'll learn.
I'll give it a little bit. It's a 2-hour lesson this time. Could probably try fixing up some of the stuff we have.
how to use a backend with this project. By the way, if something in this lesson does not work for you, you can check the troubleshooting guide in the description. First, if we look at our website, currently we only have 3 products on this website. But in the final project, we have a lot more products. So we're going to add all of these products to our website. So let's go to the code for the home page. We'll open our code and go to the files. And we're going to find the pages folder and open homepage.jsx. So this component represents the home page. And we're going to scroll down and find the element with the class product-container. And we're going to click here to collapse this element. And we're going to collapse this other product container and this other product container as well. Each product container represents one product on the page. To add more products, we could make a copy of this code and add each product manually. However, that would be very repetitive. Instead, we can generate this HTML using React. We already learned this technique in the chatbot project, where we generated a list of chat messages on the page. So we're going to review how to generate the HTML. First, we need to save the data for these products in our JavaScript. To save time, I already did this. So if we go to our files and we go to the starting code folder and we open this data folder inside products.js, I already saved the data for the products in this array. So we can just use this as our data. Each object in the array represents one product. So it has a name, an image, and a price, and some other details. The next step is to use this data to generate the HTML. We'll go back to the home page. And first, we're going to import that products array. So at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the products array from a string, and we're going to locate that file. So first we need to get out of the pages and source folder using .. and then we'll find the starting code folder and the data folder. Starting -code /data/ and the products file. Next, we're going to loop through this products array. So at the bottom here, above these product containers, we're going to insert using curly brackets the products array dot map and brackets. And we're going to give map a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. As a review, dot map takes each value in an array and transforms it. In this parameter, we get each value in this array, which is a product. So again, a product is just this object, and it has some details about the product inside. So we'll go back, and we're going to transform this product object into this HTML. To do that, we're just going to copy this HTML, and inside .map, we're going to return brackets and paste that HTML. And to fix the formatting, we're going to press Control or Command Shift P, and then search for Format Document, and press Enter. And let's scroll up. And remember, whenever we loop through an array like this, we need to give each element a key prop equals curly brackets. So the key helps React keep track of changes in this array. Now, the key has to be unique. So looking at the data, each product has a unique ID property. So we'll go back, and we're going to use the product.id as the key. So this basically takes each product object and transforms it into this HTML. So now let's save and we'll check the website. And as you can see, we took each product and transformed it into some HTML. Now, obviously, we don't want the product to be socks every time. So let's insert the details of each product. We'll go back to our code, and instead of displaying the socks every time, we're going to remove this and insert, and each product object has a name property. So we'll insert the product.name. And let's also replace the product image. So instead of showing the socks image every time, we'll remove this and we'll insert the product.image property. Next, we'll insert the ratings. The way this works is that each rating has an image, and we just have to multiply the rating by 10 to get the image name. So for this one, we're gonna put open curly bracket and close curly bracket around this value. And we're going to change this to a template string using backticks and backticks. And then instead of 45 every time, we're going to insert. And remember, for template strings to insert, we use $ curly brackets. So in here, we're going to insert the product.rating.stars and then multiply it by 10. And this should give us the ratings image that we need. Next, we're going to replace the rating count. So curly brackets, and we'll insert the product.rating.count. Next, we'll insert the price. So instead of this price every time, we'll insert the product.price cents. And we usually save money in cents because many programming languages have trouble calculating decimal numbers. Now, when we display it on the website, we want to display it as dollars. So to convert this back to dollars, we're going to divide by 100, since $1 is equal to 100 cents. And that's it. We inserted the details of each product into this HTML. This is the same technique that we used in the chatbot project, except our data is just a little more complicated now. Let's save and check the website. And now we have a list of different products on the page. And we generated the HTML site. We want to display it as dollars. So to convert this back to dollars, we're going to divide by 100. Since $1, and inside these brackets, we can tell it how many decimals to show. So we'll put 2 and save. Now, if we check the website, all the prices show 2 decimals. So that's a review of how to generate the HTML using some data. Let's go back to our code. And now that we're generating all this HTML, we can scroll to the bottom and remove this default HTML that we had before and save. And now let's save these changes into Git. We'll go to the Git section, and at the top, we'll use the message generate the HTML for the home page and commit. Now, we're going to take this project to the next level and go beyond what we did in the chatbot project. We're going to add a backend to this project. So first, we'll learn what a backend is and why we use a backend. So right now, if we look at our files, notice that all the products are saved in a file on our computer called products.js. The problem with this is an e-commerce website or an online shopping website might have thousands of products, and it does not make sense to save everything on our computer or on the customer's computer. We might not have enough space on our computer. So what the company or the store does is they set up another computer in their office or in what we call a data center. And this computer saves all the thousands of products that they offer. And then when we visit the website, this computer sends us only the products that we need to display. So this computer is called the backend. It's just another computer that's owned by the company, and it manages all the data. Here's another example of why we use a backend. Later in this course, we're going to add products to a cart. So where do we save this cart? It does not make sense to save the cart on the customer's computer, because if the customer uses a different computer to visit the website, they would no longer have access to their cart. Instead, we save the cart in the backend as well. When they access the website, the backend.
Should I start with learning HTML or build a website with HTML and CSS and GitHub pages or learn? It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, dude. Do you know what you're trying to learn? I'm learning this because I would rather be in web development than game development, so I'm taking the time to learn React. This isn't even really HTML or CSS. It has some of it, but it's not like the core of what I'm learning here. Learn web dev, then I don't know what Blockly is, but I would try learning from like one of these tutorials. Here, I can send you the full course. Sorry, I put a period on there. You can try learning from the same one I'm learning from. I mean, when you work with this, you learn the same thing. So it's not a bad idea to do programming it through this. Because you're gonna pick up a lot of good habits to go through. But there's going to be a lot to learn. But I would try this first if I had a choice, or if I had a chance.
Sends the cart to the website. So the backend also lets us share data between computers. So again, the backend is another computer that manages the data. And this is how a React website works in the real world. We usually contact a backend to get the data. So we're going to practice that in this course. We're going to learn how to add a backend, and then we're going to learn how to use the backend in React. So you can see how we use React in the real world. Now that we learned what a backend is and why we use a backend, let's add a backend to our project. We're going to click this link in the description, go to lesson 7, and click this link to open the backend code. And this is a backend.
But there's also a lot to learn with coding, man.
I called it the e-commerce backend AI because this was built with AI. And I show you how to do that in another video. But for this video, I recommend downloading this version to make sure it works with the video. You can try to recreate the backend as an exercise. So we're going to click this code button here, and we'll click download zip. Once that finishes downloading, we're going to open the downloads folder. So for me, it's right here. and then we're going to unzip this. On Windows, we're going to right-click the file, and then click Extract All. And on Mac, you can just double-click the zip file. Then, we're going to move this backend into our project. So we'll open our code, and then we're just going to drag this folder into our project. But first, I'm going to collapse these folders for now, and we're going to drag this folder to the outside and click Copy Folder so that the backend code is right beside our website. By the way, we call the website, or what the user interacts with, the front end. We're also going to rename this folder. So right-click and rename, and we'll just rename it the e-commerce backend to make it easier to understand. Next, we're going to start this backend. So we're going to go to our terminal or our command line, and we'll click here to create a new tab. And then in here, first, we're going to change directory into the e-commerce backend folder. So we'll cd e-commerce -backend. So now the command line is running inside this folder. And the process for starting the backend is very similar to the website or the front end. So first, we're going to npm install to install all the npm packages that we need. And then we'll run npm run dev to start the backend. And we'll click here to create a new tab. And then in here, first, we're going to change directory into the e-commerce backend folder. So we'll cd e-commerce -backend. So now the command line is running inside this folder. And the process for starting the backend is very similar to the website or the front end. So first, we're going to npm install to install all the npm packages that we need. And then we'll run npm run dev to start the backend. So this tells us the backend is running on port 3000, which is localhost :3000. To test it, we're going to go to our browser, and at the top, we're going to create a new tab, and we're going to go to local directory into the e-commerce backend folder. So we'll cd e-commerce -backend. So now the command line is running inside this folder. And the process for starting the backend is very similar to the website or the front end. So first, we're going to npm install to install all the npm packages that we need. And then we'll run npm run dev to start the backend. So this tells us the backend is running on port 3000, which is localhost :3000. To test it, we're going to go to our browser, and at the top, we're going to create a new tab, and we're going to go to localhost install to install all the npm packages that we need. And then we'll run npm run dev to start the backend. So this tells us the backend is running on port 3000, which is localhost :3000. To test it, we're going to go to our browser, and at the top, we're going to create a new tab, and we're going to go to localhost :3000 /API/products. And the backend should send back some data. And this is actually the data for the products. I can also click this checkbox here to show it in an easier to read format. And you can see this is the same products array that we were using before, except this is coming from the backend. So the way a backend works is when we access the backend using a URL, it will send back some data. So this is working. So now let's go back to our code and we'll save these changes into Git. Open the Git section and we'll use the message add e-commerce backend and commit. Next, we're going to learn data fetching. Data fetching means to get data from the backend using our code. So first, we're going to go to our files and let's go back to the e-commerce project and we're going to open our home page, which is right here. And we'll scroll to the top. And one way to fetch data or to get data from the backend is to use the function fetch and brackets. So fetch is a built-in function. It's provided by JavaScript. Between the brackets, we're going to create a string and we're going to put the URL that we want to get data from. So if we go back to our browser, remember that this URL gave us the product's data. So we can just select this URL and copy. And in our code, we're going to paste it into fetch. And make sure you have http:// in front. It doesn't show in the browser, but we need this in order for our code to work. So if we fetch data from this URL, this should give us the product's data that we saw earlier. However, we cannot save this data in a variable like this. And that's because when we contact a backend, it takes time for this code to reach the backend and to get a response. So this code does not finish right away. It finishes at some point in the future. As a review, we call this asynchronous code. Asynchronous code means code that does not finish right away. So how do we handle this situation? Fetch returns a promise, and a promise lets us wait for asynchronous code to finish. So a promise has a method called .then and brackets, and we give .then a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. The way this works is that this code contacts the backend to get some data, but it takes some time for the backend to respond. So the code is going to keep going line by line. Then at some point in the future, this is going to finish. We're going to get the response from the backend. When it finishes in the future, it will run the function inside .then. So that's a review of how a promise works. So next, when fetch gets a response from the backend, it will save it as a parameter in this inner function called response. By the way, when we contact the backend using fetch, this is called a request. When the backend responds with some data, this is called a response. So this parameter contains the response from the backend. And inside here, let's just console.log the response to see what it looks like. We'll save and then check our website. And we'll open the tab for our website. And we're going to open the console. Right click, inspect, and the console. And you can see that we got the response from the backend. So inside here, we have some information like the URL that we accessed and a status code. 200 means it was successful. However, notice that we don't have the product's data in this response. To get the product's data, we're going to go back to our code. And this response object has a method called response.json and brackets. So .json gives us the data that is attached to the response. In this case, it gives us the product's data. Now, the tricky part about this is response.json is also asynchronous. So again, we can't save this in a variable. Instead, this is also a promise. So we have to use .then again. and give this another function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And then inside this inner function, we have access to the data that we get from the backend. So in this case, this is the product's data. So if we console.log the data and save, and then check the console, you'll see that the backend gave us an array of products to display on the page. So this is the same thing as the products array that we saved in our file, but this data is coming from the backend. Let's go back. And that's how we fetch data or get data from the backend. We use the built-in function fetch and give it the URL of the backend. And then we use .then to wait for a response. Now, one shortcut we can use is instead of doing .then inside another .then, we can also return the response.json and then move this .then to the outside. So this code does the same. Same thing as before. This .then waits for this to finish and then runs this function. So this is just a shortcut that we can use with promises. Another thing to note is the backend can also run on the same computer as the website or the front end. So right now, this backend is actually running on our own computer. Localhost means our own computer. So when we contact the backend, we're actually just contacting our own computer. We do this during development because it's easier. But once this website is on the internet, the backend will be another computer. So now let's save this code, and we'll save this into Git. In the Git section, we'll use the message fetch data from the backend and commit. Next, notice that using fetch is still a little hard to read. We use a .then, and then we use response.json, and then another .then. To make this code cleaner, we're going to use an npm package called Axios. Axios is a cleaner way to make requests to the backend. First, we're going to go to our command line, and we'll open the tab for the front end. And here, we'll press Ctrl+C to stop the Vite server, and we're going to npm install Axios and type @ and we're going to give it a version. Save this code, and we'll save this into Git. In the Git section, we'll use the message fetch data. To make this code cleaner, we're going to use an npm package called Axios. Axios is a cleaner way to make requests to the backend. First, we're going to go to our command line, and we'll open the tab for the front end. And here, we'll press Ctrl+C to stop the Vite server, and we're going to npm install Axios and type @ and we're going to give it a version. So we can click this link in the description and then go to lesson 7, and this is the version of Axios we're going to use. So again, you should always use the version that you see on your page. So select the version on your page and copy it, and then paste it in our code, and press enter to install Axios. Once that's installed, we're going to run npm run dev to restart the Vite server. And then to use Axios in our code, we're going to go to the home page, and at the top, we're going to import Axios without curly brackets from a string Axios. And now, instead of using fetch, we're going to use axios.get. So this does the same thing as before, except the data from the backend will be saved directly inside the response. So instead of doing all these steps, we can just get the data using response.data. So let's console.log this to see if it works. So console.log and save. And then if we open the console, you'll notice it gets the same products data as before. But if we look at our code, it's a lot cleaner because we can just get the data directly from the response. So as you can see, Axios is a cleaner way to make requests to the backend. So now let's save this
Guy,
into
make
Git.
sure you're being nice.
In the Git section, we'll use a message, use Axios to fetch the data and commit. Now, let's use this data from the backend to generate the HTML, instead of using the products file that we had before. But first, we have a problem. This code is directly inside the homepage component. That means whenever the homepage changes or re-renders, it will run this code again and send another request to the backend. However, we just need to load the products once on this page. We don't need to load the products over and over again. To make this code run once, we can put it inside a use effect. At the top, we're going to import curly brackets use effect from React. And above this code, we're going to do use effect brackets and give this a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. Use effect lets us control when some code runs. We're going to move this code inside the use effect. So we'll cut, and in here, we'll paste. And I'll select these lines and press tab to reformat. By default, use effect runs this code every time the component is created or updated, but we can control this. At the end of this function, we're going to add a comma and an empty array. As a review, this is called a dependency array. The dependency array lets us control when use effect runs. If we use an empty array, that means this code will only run once after the component is created. And that's exactly what we need here. We just need to load the products once on this page. By the way, you might notice in the console that use effect runs twice instead of once. So this is totally normal, and it's caused by using strict mode in our app. Strict mode runs use effect twice to help us catch bugs, and it only does this during development. So now that we have the data, how do we use it in this loop down here to generate the HTML? To do that, we need to save the product's data inside the state. So at the top, we're also going to import use state from React. And at the top of our component, we're going to do const square bracket equals use state and brackets. As a review, use state gives us an array with two values. The first value is the name of the data. In this case, we'll name it the products. And then we'll type a comma. And the second value of use state is the updater function. The updater function lets us update this value, and then it will regenerate the HTML. We usually name the updater function set, and then the name of the data, capital P, products. And finally, between these brackets, we're going to put the starting value of the products. Let's just use an empty array. And now, after we get the products from the backend, we're going to save it into the state. So instead of console.log, we'll use the updater function set products. This will save the products data into here, and then it's going to use this to generate the HTML. So now we're using data HTML. So now we're using data from the, so instead of console.log, we'll use the updater function set products. This will save the products data into here, and then it's going to use this to generate the HTML. So now we're using data from the backend to generate the HTML, and we don't need to import this file here anymore. So the only thing to note is that the name of the data has to match the name that we use down here, so that this code is actually using the state. Now let's save, and we'll check the website. And everything still works, except now we're using data from the backend to generate this HTML. We'll go back to our code. Second value of useState is the updater function. The updater function lets us update this value, and then it will regenerate the HTML. We usually name the updater function set, and then the name of the data, capital P, products. And finally, between these brackets, we're going to put the starting value of the products. Let's just use an empty array. And now, after we get the products from the backend, we're going to save it into the state. So instead of console.log, we'll use the updater function set products. This will save the products data into here, and then it's going to use this to generate the HTML. So now we're using data from the backend to generate the HTML, and we don't need to import this file here anymore. So the only thing to note is that the name of the data has to match the name that we use down here, so that this code is actually using the state. Now let's save, and we'll check the website. And everything still works, except now we're using data from the backend to generate this HTML. We'll go back to our code, and we'll save this into Git. In the Git section, we'll create the message, use data from the backend to generate the HTML, and commit. Next, if we look at the website, in the homepage, we also need to get the cart from the backend, because we need to display this quantity number up here. To do that, we'll go back to our code, and we're going to make another request to the backend to get the cart. So below this request, we're going to
How you holding up, Chris? Still learning?
use Axios again. Axios dot get brackets a string, and we'll give it the URL http / localhost 3000 / API / cart -items. The way this works is the backend is running on http localhost 3000, and after this we add a URL path. Each URL path gives us different data. For example, the URL path /API /products gives us the products data. The URL path /API /cart items gives us the cart data. So the URL path can actually be anything we want. Whoever creates the backend decides what the URL paths will be. In the description, you can find a documentation page for my backend. And this lists all the URL paths that we can use. A common naming convention is to start the URL path with /API. API means Application Programming Interface. Starting with /API makes it clear that these URL paths are specifically for interacting with the backend. So we already learned how to use /API /products. Now we're going to learn how to use /API /cart items. And remember, whenever we make a request to the backend, it's going to take some time to get a response. So we need to wait for this code to finish using .then. And then we'll give this a function. And the response is going to be saved in here. So when we make a request to /API /cart items, we're going to get the cart in the response. So in here, let's console.log the response.data to see what the cart looks like. We'll save and we'll check the console. And you might need to refresh. And the backend responded with an array. And this array represents the cart that we have on the website. So each item in the cart contains the product ID that we want to buy and the quantity of that product. So next, we're going to use this to calculate the quantity and display it on the page. So we'll go back to our code. And first, we need to save this cart into state so we can use it to create the HTML. At the top, we'll create another state, const square brackets equals use state brackets. And this state will save the here. Let's console.log the response.data to see what the cart looks like. We'll save and we'll check the console. And you might need to refresh. And the backend responded with an array and a request to the backend. It's going to take some time to get a response. So we need to wait here. It represents the cart that we have on the website. So each item in the cart contains the product ID that we want to buy and the quantity of that product. So next, we're going to use this to calculate the quantity and display it on the page. So we'll go back to our code. And first, we need to save this cart into state so we can use it to create the HTML. At the top, we'll create another state, const square brackets equals use state brackets. And this state will save the cart, comma, and the updater function set capital C cart. And let's set the starting value of the cart to an empty array. And we'll scroll down. And now once we get the cart from the backend, we're going to save it in the state. So instead of console.log, we're going to use the updater function set cart. And now the cart from the backend will be saved inside this variable. And remember that the quantity for the cart is inside the header. So we need to pass the cart into the header using a prop. So here we'll add a prop cart equals curly brackets, and we'll give it the cart. Let's save this file, and we'll go into our code and go to components header.jsx. And then inside the header, we're going to get the cart from the props. To do that, at the top, we'll type curly brackets and the cart. As a reminder, this is a shortcut for this code. And now we're going to calculate the total quantity in this cart. So at the top, let's create a variable let total quantity equals 0 to start. And then we'll loop through the cart using cart.for each brackets, and we'll give it a function. And the inner function will get one parameter, which is each item in the cart. So we'll call this the cart item. And then each cart item has a quantity. So we're going to add that to this total quantity up here. We'll do total quantity plus equal the cart item dot quantity. And now we can scroll down till we see the cart quantity down here. And instead of 3 every time, we're going to insert the total quantity and save. And now if we look at our project, now it will display the total quantity using data from the backend. So now let's go back to our code. And if we scroll up, you might see an error here for props validation. Again, this is an older feature of React, so we can disable this check by going into our files and opening eslint.config.js. And then we'll scroll down. Inside this rules object, we're going to add a string react/prop-types : the string off. So make sure it's inside of this rules object. We can save. And now if we go back to the header, the props validation error should be gone. So now let's save this code into Git. We'll open the Git section and we'll create a message, get cart from the backend and display quantity and commit. Next, if we go back to the homepage, so in our files, go to pages and homepage and scroll up. Notice that for each request, we're sending it to localhost 3000. So we can actually set up a shortcut in Vite. So we don't have to type localhost 3000 every time. So we can actually remove these and save. And then we're going to go to our files and we're going to open vite.config.js. And inside here, we're going to add the property server colon and an object. And inside we'll add the property proxy colon another object. And in here we'll add a string slash API colon, and we're going to give this an object. And inside we'll add a target property colon and the string HTTP colon / localhost colon 3000. So this is called a server proxy configuration. This just means that if the URL path starts with /API, like we had it before, the request will automatically go to localhost 3000. So we don't have to type it every time. Another thing we can set up is when we load images, we also want to load them from the backend. Remember, the backend should manage the data, including the product images. So in here, we'll also add a comma and add a string / images colon and an object, and we'll give it the same target. So we'll select this and copy, and in here we'll paste and save. And we need to do one more thing. We're going to go inside index.html, and in the head, we're going to add same target. So we'll select this and copy, and in here we'll paste and save. And we need to do one more thing. We're going to go inside index.html, and in the head, we're going to add less than base / greater than. And we're going to give this an attribute href equals double quotes and a slash. So this adds slash in front of any relative URLs. All the image URLs start with images, and this will convert them into /images so that our redirect will work. Let's save, and we'll go back to the vite config. So now when we get images, we're going to get them from the backend. And now because we changed the vite configuration, it's a good idea to stop the server with Control-C and then restart the server using npm run dev. And now let's check the website to make sure everything is working. So I'll just refresh this to make sure. And everything still looks good. So now we'll go back to our code and we'll save these changes into Git. Inside Git, we're going to type the message add server proxy config for /API and /images and commit. Next, we're going to move on to the checkout page. So let's open the website and we'll click the cart icon in the top right. And we're going to work on this page. So on this page, we also need the cart to generate this HTML. So we'll go back to our code and we'll open our files and we're going to open checkoutpage.jsx. And now inside here, we could do another axios.get /API/cart again, but remember we already loaded the cart on the home page. It does not make sense to reload the cart whenever we switch pages. We just need to load the cart once for the entire website. To do that, we're going to open our files and we're going to open checkoutpage.jsx. And now inside here, we could do another axios.get /API/cart again, but remember we already loaded the cart on the home page. It does not make sense to reload the cart whenever we switch pages. We just need to load the cart once for the entire website. To do that, we're going to go to the home page and we're going to share this cart between the two pages using the technique lifting the state up. As a review, this means we move the cart state up to an outer component. In this case, the outer component is the app component here, which contains the home page. So we're going to lift the cart up into the app component. And from here, we can share the cart between the homepage and the checkout page. So first, let's go into the homepage again. We're going to select this cart and cut and go back to the app. And we're going to lift it up in here by pasting it. And we also need the code that loads the cart. So in the homepage, we're going to select this code and cut and save inside app.jsx. Below this, we're going to paste. And remember, we need to put this inside a use effect so that it only runs once. So use effect, brackets, give it a function, and a empty array at the end. And we're going to select it and cut, and inside here, paste. And I'll select these lines and press tab to reformat them. And next, we'll need to import this code. So at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, use state, and use effect from React. And we'll also import Axios. So at the top again, we're going to import Axios from the string Axios. So now that we have the cart, we're going to share it between these two pages using a prop. So for the home page, we'll add a prop cart equals curly brackets, and we'll give it the cart. And for the checkout page as well, cart equals curly brackets, and we'll save the cart. Let's save this file, and we'll go into the home page. And at the top, we need to access the cart from the props using curly brackets, the cart, and save. So the code should work the same as before, except we're just getting the cart from the props now. Let's open our website to make sure it works. We're going to go to the home page and refresh, and that looks good. We'll go back to our code. So now that we lifted the state up, we can just load the cart once for the entire website instead of reloading it on every page. We'll open the Git section and we'll give it the message, lift cart up and share it between pages and commit. Next, we're going to use the cart to generate the HTML for the checkout page. So first make sure that we pass the cart to the checkout page using this prop. And now we're going to open the checkout page, which is here. And we're going to access the cart from the props using curly brackets and the cart. And now we'll use this cart to generate the HTML down here. Now inside this code, we're going to press Ctrl F to find some code, and we're going to search for cart-item-container. And here, we're going to collapse this element, and we'll collapse this element as well. So each of these represents a cart item on the page. So let's generate this using the cart. Above this, we're going to insert cart.map brackets, and we'll give it a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And this inner function gets one parameter, which is the cart item. And for each item, we're going to return brackets some HTML. So for each cart item, we want to generate this HTML. So let's just select it and copy. And inside here, we're going to paste. And to fix the formatting, we're going to press Control or Command Shift P and run format document. Now let's scroll up. And remember, when we loop through an array, each element needs a key property. Each cart item has a product ID, which is unique. So we're going to save the key as cart-item.product-id. And now, instead of showing the same product every time, we're going to insert the details from each cart item. However, there is a problem here. Remember that the cart looks this HTML. So let's just select it and copy. And inside here, we're going to paste. And to fix the formatting, we're going to press Control or Command Shift P and run format document. Now let's scroll up. And remember, when we loop through an array, each element needs a key property. Each cart item has a product ID, which is unique. So we're going to save the key as cart item.product ID. And now, instead of showing the same product every time, we're going to insert the details from each cart item. However, there is a problem here. Remember that the cart looks like this. It doesn't have any product data on it. To fix this, we're going to go to the app component where we load the cart. And at the end of this URL, we can add $expand equals product. So this is called a query parameter. A query parameter lets us add additional information to our request. When the backend receives this query parameter, it's going to add product details to the cart. So it's going to expand the cart with product details. So now let's save this file. And we're going to open the website. And we're going to go to the checkout page. And we're going to open the console. So we'll right click, inspect. And inside the console, we're going to open the network tab. So I'm going to remove any search that I have. And in here, we can see all the requests that we make to the backend and the responses. So by the way, requests only show up here if the console was open before the request. So we may need to refresh to get the request to show up in the network tab. And now we can see our request to cart-items. If you don't see it, you may need to search for it up here by typing cart. And we have it here. So we can open this by clicking it and then go into the response tab. And here you can see the response from the backend. So now you can see that each cart item has a property called product. And this contains all the product details that we need for this page. So now let's go back to our code. And we're going to go to the checkout page. And now instead of the socks every time, we're going to remove this and insert the cart item dot product dot name. And we'll also replace the image. So we'll remove this and insert the cart item dot product dot image. And down here, we're going to insert the price. Now, if we go to the home page, remember that in the home page, we wrote some code here to display the price. So let's actually move this code into a function so we can reuse it. Inside our files, we're going to click the source folder and we'll the cart item dot product dot name. And we'll also replace the image. So we'll remove this and insert the cart item dot product dot image. And down here, we're going to insert the price. Now, if we go to the home page, remember that in the home page, we wrote some code here to display the price. So let's actually move this code into a function so we can reuse it. Inside our files, we're going to click the source folder and we'll create a new folder. And let's call it utils for utilities. And inside the utils folder, we'll create a new file and we'll name it money.js. So this file contains utilities or code that helps us work with money. So in here, let's create a function and we'll name it format money, brackets and curly brackets. And we're going to copy the code from the home page. So inside the home page, we're going to take all of this code and copy it. And inside money.js, inside here, we'll paste it. And now we're going to turn this into a string. At the front, we'll type backtick, and at the end, a backtick to create a template string. And remember, in template strings, to insert something, we need dollar curly brackets. And now, instead of getting the product.price_cents, we're going to pass it into this function. So let's name the parameter amount cents. And we're going to remove this and replace it with amount cents. So this function lets us convert any amount cents into this format. At the end, let's return this value from the function. And we'll export it so we can use it in other files. And save. So now we can go back to the home page, and at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the format money function that we just created from a string, and we're going to locate the utils folder. So we'll go out of this folder with /utils/money. And now we'll scroll back down. And instead of this code, we're going to remove it and insert format money brackets, and we'll give it product.price_cents and save. And now let's reuse this function in the checkout page. So we'll open the checkout page, and at the top, we're going to import curly brackets, the format money function from a string, and we're going to locate this file. And for me, I'll go out of this folder using /utils/money. Now, if you did the exercises from the previous lesson, this file might be inside a folder called checkout. In that case, make sure you have two .. in front. And now we're going to scroll back down, and we're going to replace this money with curly brackets, format money brackets, and we're going to give it the cart item.product.price_cents, and we'll replace the quantity. So insert cart item.quantity and save. And now if we go back to the website, now we are generating these cart items using data from the backend. And this was the default HTML we had before. So now we can go back to our code, and we can scroll down, and we can remove the default HTML and save. So now let's save these changes into Git. We'll open the Git section, and at the top, we'll type the message generate HTML for the cart items and commit. Next, we're going to generate the HTML for the delivery options. So we'll go back to the checkout page, and we'll scroll to the top of this component. And here, we'll load the delivery options from the back. Next, we're going to generate the HTML for the delivery options. So we'll go back to the checkout page, and we'll scroll to the top of this component. And here, we'll load the delivery options from the backend. So first, let's import Axios. At the top, we'll import Axios from the Axios npm package. And we'll also need import curly brackets, use state, and use effect to save the delivery options. So import it from React. And now inside the component, we'll create some state to save the delivery options. Const square bracket equals use state and brackets. And we'll name this delivery options : and the updater function set delivery options. And we'll set the starting value to an empty array. Next, we'll get the delivery options from the backend. So here we'll do use effect brackets, and we'll give it a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And at the end, we'll give it a comma and an empty dependency array so that this code only runs once on this page. And inside here, we're going to call axios.get brackets. And the URL to get the delivery options is /API/delivery-options. And then we're going to wait for the response to come back using .then brackets and give it a function, brackets, arrow, and curly brackets. And inside the function, the response from the backend will be saved as the response parameter. So once we get this response, we're going to save it in the delivery options up here using set delivery options brackets response.data. Now let's save this code, and we're going to check the network tab to see if it works. So we'll open the console and we'll open the network tab.
All right, dudes. I think I'm gonna take a break. I've been at this for 2 hours, 2.5, almost 3 hours. We streamed earlier, so I'll be on later. Thank you guys for hanging out. Yeah, how's your coding going, guys? Okay, brother. How's everything going with coding, man? You keeping up? Just be careful about tutorial hell, man. Like, there's a lot of stuff that could be going on. Make sure what you're learning is useful information. Just throwing it out there. But I'll be on a little bit. Oh, right on. Okay. Yeah, let me know how it goes. I'll be on maybe about an hour, so I'm just gonna go lay down for a little bit. I have a lot of information to digest. My number one advice when learning programming, dude, is take breaks in between how much information you consume. Like 15-20 minutes, which is what I'm about to go do. I'm just gonna go lay down for a little bit. And make sure you're digesting the information, because it'll help you in the long run. But alright, dude, I'll catch you later. Thanks for hanging out, Grizz. I'll be on in maybe about an hour or so if you're still working. Bye, dude.